The Necromancer is a general of the undead, raising and commanding skeletal militia and hulking golems to overpower any enemy that stands in their way. Now, this ghoulish spellcaster blends summoning with death magic in order to achieve victory. And as with all of the other classes in Diablo 4, the Necromancer has had a facelift and will bring some cool new mechanics to the table. So, even if you've been a Necromancer main since day one, there will still be things that you need to learn and master. So let's raise some hell and let's talk about the Necromancer's unique class mechanic. But before we do that, I do just need to give a quick disclaimer. So the Necro is the class that has the least amount of coverage and confirmed and published information about how it actually works. Compared to the Barbarian, the Sorcerer, and the Rogue, we are looking extremely thin at understanding what each skill does and how they'll actually end up playing. So in this video, we'll talk about everything we know, but please understand that things may vary between what you see here and what we actually get our hands on here in a few weeks. Okay, so let's get back to the class mechanic. So the Necromancer has access to something called the Book of the Dead, and this allows you to perform some pretty deep customization on your summons, of which there are skeleton warriors, skeleton mages, and the golem. Now, each summon has one of three specializations that you can choose from. So for example, skeleton warriors can be skirmishers, defenders, or reapers. Now, skirmishers are your standard warriors. They have increased damage, but they do have reduced health, while defenders have regular damage, but they do have bonus health. And reapers have slower attacks, but they deal AoE damage, and they possess a special charged attack that'll deal high amounts of damage. Now, mages, on the other hand, can shift between the damage types of shadow, cold, and bone. Now, we don't have any information on shadow mages yet, but we do know about cold and bone. So cold is going to chill and freeze enemies, and bone will end up casting bone skills that deal heavy damage at the cost of minion life. Then with golems, you can choose between bone, blood, and iron. Bone is going to taunt enemies in a wide area, blood will drain the life from nearby enemies, and iron will slam the ground and stun enemies. Now, building up on the decision of choosing your specialization for each minion, you'll also get access to unique upgrades for each minion in order to change their overall playstyle. So for an example, we have iron golems. Iron golem's first upgrade is every 5th iron golem attack will cause a shockwave, dealing a certain percentage of damage to the primary enemy and to all enemies behind them. The second upgrade is that your iron golem's slam attack will also make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. And then we'll get a little bit into it later, but you can also sacrifice these minions. And if you do, you're going to deal 30% increased critical strike damage, but you lose the ability to summon a golem. Again, we'll talk about that here in a moment. So really, it's up to you on how you want to configure your army and what sort of play style you want to have. Being able to configure each minion is a really, really nice touch. It gives the Necromancer a little bit more depth and identity rather than just being a zookeeper. But let's say you're someone who would rather be a one-man show. If that's the case, then you can sacrifice specific units in exchange for a personal permanent buff. Now, this is going to allow you to choose between having none, some, or all of your minions summoned. This is again where you can dive even deeper into customizing how you want your Necro to play and which minions you would rather have at your disposal. So as someone who has played a little bit of Necromancer over the years, this does seem like a pretty great way to take a stale system and add a twist to make it a little bit more engaging. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this system actually plays out during the beta. So that is all we have so far when it comes to class mechanics. Next, I want to talk about resources and skills. So the Necromancer has 2 resources to fuel all of their attacks. They have Essence and they have Corpses. Now, Essence is going to be the primary resource that's used to cast skills. It'll slowly regenerate over time, and then you can use basic skills to speed up the recovery if you want to. Corpses, on the other hand, are defeated enemies who can then be used to summon minions or trigger other skills like Corpse Explosion, for instance. So let's talk about those skills next. Now, we don't have the full picture, but we do know about some of the skills that we'll see from the Necromancer. For instance, for our summons, we have Raised Skeleton and we have Golem. I'm assuming we're also going to have Raised Skeletal Mage, or maybe that's built into Raised Skeleton. We don't know that quite yet. However, let's talk about some of the other ones that we do know and we even have some gameplay clips of. So first up, we have Bone Spirit. This is going to consume all of your essence in order to conjure a spirit made of bone that'll seek out the nearest enemy, explode on contact, and deal area of effect damage. This damage will increase depending on the amount of essence spent, so obviously maximizing the amount you have before casting it is a must. Then we have Bone Prison. Bone Prison, you're going to slam your weapon into the ground and call forth a wall of bone to completely surround a target or an area. And then, as the name suggests, enemies cannot break through that Bone Prison while it's active. Next, we have Bone Spear, which is an iconic Necromancer skill. This one is a projectile that deals damage as it passes through enemies, and then if it bounces off of a wall, it'll split into 3 smaller projectiles that'll deal additional damage. Next up, we have our darkness skills, starting with Decompose. This is going to channel dark magic onto enemies, deal damage, and generate essence simultaneously. Decompose will also periodically spawn corpses, which will allow you to summon minions or use corpse-based skills. Next, we have Blight. Blight is going to cast a ball of energy in any direction that'll explode upon contact or whenever it expires. This will deal immediate AoE damage and then leave a spot on the ground that has a damage over time effect to any enemy that stands in that area for a short period of time. Next up are our blood skills. So let's talk about Blood Surge. This is a close range AoE attack that draws blood from surrounding enemies in order to create a blood nova. The damage dealt by this attack is dependent on how much blood is drawn by the Necromancer. So here you want to make sure you position yourself in the middle of a group of enemies in order to maximize its power. Next, we have Blood Mist. This is a defensive skill. It's going to grant temporary immunity from damage by transforming the Necromancer into a mist of blood. And then as an added bonus, it'll also drain life from any enemy that you pass through. Now, the next 2 skills don't have categories quite yet since they were recorded, but Blizzard hasn't confirmed what they do or where they reside, so we will make a couple of assumptions, though we do know they are in the game. So the first one is Iron Maiden. Now, with this clip, it's very hard to tell what's exactly happening since this is a PvP skirmish, but my assumption is that it will resemble the Diablo 2 Iron Maiden skill, which is, this is a curse that causes all melee damage done by the target to be reflected towards the attacker. Iron Maiden is similar in function to the Paladin's Thorns aura or the Druid's Spirit of Barbs. The next one is obviously the classic Corpse Explosion. So Corpse Explosion, I'm guessing, will function similar to the previous iterations of Corpse Explosion, where fallen enemies will leave behind a corpse and the Necromancer can blow it up to deal large amounts of AoE damage. So guys, overall, the Necromancer is a strong, versatile class that allows players to choose just how much management they want in their summoner. Players can exchange summons for powerful buffs, or if they prefer the undead army, they can overpower enemies with strength and numbers. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Is this the class for you, or do you have another one in mind? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you like Diablo content, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.